Hello? Anybody home?
Today, I want you to open your mind.
I've almost come to the conclusion that the story is so damning that the mass of people can't deal with it.
We are in process of developing a whole series of techniques to get people actually to love their servitude.
We face a hostile ideology, global in scope, atheistic in character, ruthless in purpose, and insidious in method.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence.
To change the minds and the attitudes and the beliefs of the people to bring about one world socialist totalitarian government.
The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists.
It has patterned itself after every dictator who has ever planted the ripping imprint of a boot on the pages of history since the beginning of time.
If you can get people to consent to the state of affairs in which they are living, then you have a much more easily controllable society than you would if you were relying wholly on clubs and firing squads and concentration camps.
Tools of conquest do not necessarily come with bombs and explosions and fallout. There are weapons, they're simply thoughts. Prejudices.
As you connect the dots between different people, organizations, religions, history, suddenly the picture starts to form.
The kingdom of God is within man, not one man, nor a group of men.
Someone born in the United States is not more special than someone born in Mexico. They're just vehicles for the consciousness to experience.
They do not want your children to be educated. They do not want you to think too much.
It was learned that the aliens had been and were then manipulating masses of people through secret societies, witchcraft, magic, the occult, and religion.
They reach into our children. Music, television, books.
Prey on children's innocence.
How can I disprove lies that are stamped with an efficiency?
So if you have the opportunity to stand next to one of these machines, it feels like an altar to an alien god.
Genetic power is the most awesome force the planet's ever seen, but you wield it like a kid that's found his dad's gun.
The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc is now in the possession of the Army.
Too many others know what's happening out there. And no one, no government agency has jurisdiction over the truth.
Any state, any entity, any ideology that fails to recognize the worth, the dignity, the rights of man, that state is obsolete. A case to be filed under M for Mankind in the Twilight Zone.
About time some of you got acquainted with the real hard truth.
You don't connect the dots, it's just a mass of what's all this about.
You are listening to the Secret Teachings Radio. I'm your host, Ryan Gable. TSTradio.info is our website if you would like to find our full show archive. Some of you listening and watching the video show tonight, October 31st, 2025, you can see me. Hello. For those of you who are listening in audio form only, you already know where the archive is, and you can catch all of our previous Halloween episodes. The last about 3 weeks we've been doing Halloween episodes. This concludes the Halloween series tonight. Carving Out Disease is the name of the show. If you'd like to contact me, you can email rdgable@yahoo.com. And the social media links are also on our website. If you're on one of the social media platforms, please follow us or like us. You might have noticed that we don't have much of a social media presence. The reason for that is because we've been, before it was popular, we've been kicked off of networks, we've been kicked off of platforms, brought back onto platforms, kicked off again. So that's why we don't have much of a social media presence. So if you're watching this right now, know that our main archive is in the link below. That's where about 99% of listeners find the show. Otherwise, thank you for listening, no matter where you are, how you're listening. I will look at the chat room right now before we get started and comment on some of the listeners in there right now. 9191 the head is in here. Yes, we have an early show tonight, a little bit early because our guest tonight is in a time zone that we need to do the show slightly earlier. Bad Whiskey is here. Hello, Bad Whiskey. Thank you for joining us. Mojo is also here. Thank you, Mojo, for joining us on the show tonight. Patriot Girl, who is consistently here. We are not only early today, Patriot Girl, we're also back-to-back because of what happened to last Friday's show with it being taken down due to Well, they gave us a couple of reasons, but that's why I don't do YouTube shows, because they can just get taken down so easily. And we don't monetize them either. So if you're looking for super chats tonight, we do not do that. Just comment in the regular chat. Also in the chat is Deborah. And we also have, what is that name? Lassoon. Thank you for joining us in the chat as well tonight. Eric is here. Hello, Eric, or Erica. Is it Eric or Erica? Thank you for joining us on the show. Trad is here, and Rita. Yes, 2 shows in a row, Rita. Thank you for joining us again. Through the Darkness is here. Paula Dean is here. Lori Ann is here. We have more listeners trickling in at the moment. Noka is also here. Aloha, Noka. I think we have a couple of listeners in Hawaii, in the state of Hawaii. I think we have a couple of listeners down there. It's like it's early morning where you are, isn't it? Or it's you're probably a couple of hours ahead, behind me. I can't figure out all the time zones because I am in the land of the rising sun, so it's pretty early here. The sun is coming up now. Hey, everyone. Julie Walker is here. Hello, Julie. Death092 is also here. Yeah, why is your name changed? I think YouTube changed names. Somebody mentioned that to me. I don't know how that works. Anyway, for everybody in the chat, thank you for joining us. I know we have more people trickling in now. Say hello, and I will throw you on the screen. You also are on the right side of the screen already with the little chat box, which they've either I've just figured out or they've just given me the feature to be able to change the size and the direction of it. So we will make it wide and small here, or medium here, so you can see the promo picture tonight, Carving Out Disease. So after last night's show, which was a 4-hour plus special with the pre-show as well, we had Mike D, our co-host, and we had an old co-host come on the show, Nick Cariotti, who joined us for about 3 hours of the full broadcast. It's a very fun show. If you missed it, it's not only on social media, but it's in the archive. If you have not listened to it, just listen to it, not watched it. The audio for the archive is so much better than YouTube. I don't know why YouTube is. I mean, it's good quality. It's just not as good as I like it. So if you go back and listen to the show in the audio archive, it is, I think, even better audio quality, and you might get a new show experience, especially with some of the 911 calls and the stories that we told and some of the clips we played last night. For tonight's show, because I'm a day ahead and people celebrate Halloween either, All Hallows Eve or All Hallows Eve, or I don't know when people celebrate Halloween. When I was a kid, things started to change and people were having like trunk or treats 3 or 4 days before Halloween because parents work, or people were having Halloween after Halloween. So we're finishing up our Halloween series. We'll finish up this week. We've got a rotting pumpkin for our promo picture tonight. And I thought, what would be something that is relevant to the season or the changing of the seasons, and also would be relevant to our guest this evening. Our guest is Dawn Lester. I'll bring her on here in a few minutes. We're talking about disease, or we're talking about health. And I'm so glad that she sent me this article that I have in front of me here, because I was thinking the same thing. And then it turns out there's a BBC article about this. And it's, at least I'm guessing this is in the UK, but I've also read the same thing in the US, that flu season has started early this year. And flu season, I'm not sure if we just wake up one day and they declare it's finally flu season, or if they base it on some kind of statistical increase at hospitals for testing, which is all based maybe on what, they give them an instruction. Okay, start testing for the flu today. And then it suddenly becomes flu season. It's almost like a Super Bowl event. You wait for weeks and months, and then there's a big event week leading up to the Super Bowl, and then you have the game, and and then it's all over, except the flu just continues on and on. But we build up to the flu season like that, right? It's flu season, it's hurricane season, as if it's something that we're creating, as opposed to it just naturally happening, where it gets colder, it gets darker. We start eating really poor food choices. And then we get really sick, and then people are like, well, it's flu season. It's a virus. It can't be the weather. It can't be the Halloween candy. I actually read, and I'm not saying Halloween candy is what's making everybody sick. It's not like the only thing. But I read this story from NBC News. Well, I read it like 2 weeks ago, but I pulled it back up again tonight. That, we think that kids eat a lot of candy, which they do, but you know who's eating most of the candy in the United States? Adults. And not only adults eating most of the candy. According to a survey of several thousand people in the United States, the average American is eating most of the candy before Halloween. And this is a CVS Pharmacy research survey that most Americans are buying candy and then they're eating it, and it's not even getting to the children. So I think we have a problem. It used to be the kids ate all the candy. Now the adults are just, I guess, hoarding it for themselves. I thought that was funny, especially because it's estimated that Americans spent, it's a crazy amount of money, $3.9 billion on Halloween candy. And I read another estimate, it was about 40 to 50% of the population is participating in that 3.9 billion. So I don't know, what is that, 150 million people? And then you're spending about, what, $4 billion? I don't know what that works out to. We could do a little bit of math here. I think it works out to, we did an estimate before with a lower number. It was like $100+ on the candy. Still a lot of money, especially for people that say, I don't have money to eat healthy. It's just too expensive. Although I wonder, I guess they didn't cut the food stamps off yet. So I assume most people bought their candy with food stamps too, which is maybe that's another problem to think about. So anyway, all of these things were going through my head, and I thought these would be at least a starting point, especially flu season, for our show tonight with Don Lester. So let's bring Don on from the UK. Don, hello and welcome to the Secret Teachings again, my friend. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for inviting me again, Ryan. It's always good to have conversations with you and dive into these topics and try and dispel some of the myths and problems of what's going on and how people are being conditioned and how we can help them see through the conditioning.
That is the most
Especially with
important
health.
part. Yes, especially with health, and that is the most important part for sure, to see through the conditioning. So I don't know if you've succumbed to it yet, but it's flu season. It started in the UK, and apparently in the US it also started. And it's pretty convenient that it starts right around the time when it starts to get dark and cold and people start to eat worse and maybe exercise less. It's strange that those things parallel each other.
Yes, and I'm not sure if it's sort of chicken or egg, because whether they are starting the propaganda that it's flu season and then people start manifesting those symptoms because they've heard that it's flu season, because we know the placebo nocebo effect does occur. And a lot of people are still feeling the after effects of what happened in 2020. I mean, I think fewer and fewer, but there's still nonsense about so-called COVID or any of that stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, there's so much of it is propaganda, and there are ulterior motives for it, which are, the main one is obviously the vaccine agenda, which is in that article, which I'm sure we'll get into. So,
well, why don't you take us through the story about the UK flu season? I've got something similar in the US, but flu season started. What does that even mean? What does it mean that flu season started? What's the cause of it? What's being said in the UK?
Well, it's just the health, again, air quotes here, health officials are saying that cases are rising. What that actually means, we don't necessarily know, because there's no further information. So whether that's just their propaganda or estimates, could be just estimates, they take a small sample and then extrapolate it out, or whether it's whether they are seeing more people going to see their doctor with certain symptoms. I mean, one of the things in this article, is, I mean, it's also the, the numbers. So that, first of all, last year, and I'm quoting from the article, last year, nearly 8,000 people died from flu. And in the 2022-23 flu season, there were nearly 16,000 deaths. Well, I'd refute that anyway, and I'm sure we'll get into it, because nobody actually dies from flu per se, because it's, because flu is supposed to be a virus. So, we're getting into that. But it said that it's a very serious disease. It's not just a nasty cold. So clearly they're ramping up the idea that there's something, as you're highlighting there, they're ramping it up to make it sound worse, because I mean, the definition of flu is somewhat different from a cold. A flu will have, generally people will have things like sort of raised temperatures and aches that separate what's called flu from what's called a cold, which are the milder symptoms of just having cough, runny nose, sore throat, possibly maybe a bit of a headache, but they're much, much milder symptoms. So I mean, by definition, flu is allegedly worse than a cold. I mean, I'm sure we'll go into what those symptoms really are, but of course, the real point of this article is sort of fairly early on, talking about the UK Health Security Agency urging people eligible for the flu vaccine to come forward to get protected. And as you can see, so the, as you say, vaccination plea.
So the flu season began 5 weeks early, and in order to protect yourself, they've got a solution that, even though you get it every year, the plea, they plead with you every year and you get it every year. A lot of people get it. It still apparently doesn't protect you from the flu, because it keeps starting earlier and people keep getting sicker with this very terrible, serious disease, Don. It seems strange to me that we keep doing the same thing over and over again, and it doesn't stop the disease.
No, so they have their excuses where they'll say, the again, air quote, virus mutates, and so it'll be a different one each year, so they have to monitor it and see which one it's going to be. But I don't think they change the actual flu vaccine as such. I mean, that they change their story to fit their narrative, but none of it's based on what really causes these symptoms. So yeah.
That's a separate issue we need to address, is what causes
Yes.
symptoms. But what exactly? I mean, in my mind, the way that I'm viewing it as a civilian here is that suddenly, out of nowhere, one day we wake up, in this case 5 weeks ago, maybe I missed it, but we wake up one day and suddenly this one specific flu virus, unique from all the others, just randomly starts targeting people, and everybody gets sick with the same exact one. Like, where does it come from? Is it just sitting there until Halloween and it doesn't affect people, and then it goes to work on Halloween? Like, where is this thing? Where does it come from? How does it just attack everybody at the same time? This unique virus. I don't understand what they claim to say is the truth here.
It's a great question, because what does the flu virus do the rest of the year? Where is it? Does it go into hibernation? It's absolutely crazy, and this is really what I feel is important, that we all start asking these questions. We all start not taking these statements for granted, and saying, well, first of all, what is, as you say, what is flu season? How can it come 5 weeks early? And when is it supposed to start? What is, does the virus kind of say, at such a date, it's going to suddenly appear and start attacking people? I mean, it really is crazy. When you start looking at it logically and really with an open mind and critical thinking skills in place. And of course, we've all been trained, indoctrinated not to ask these questions, but so many people are now really doing that and asking the questions and starting to not accept what we're being told at face value. And the other point is that there are always so many different parts to these stories, because if there was just one part where everyone exposed it and said, oh no, that's a load of nonsense, then their narrative would fall apart. So they've got to have lots of different parts to it for many reasons. One is to create confusion, of course, and the other one is so if people really learn what's going on and can see through one part of it, there are so many other moving parts to it. So but I mean, it really is important to ask these questions and just say, well, what do you mean 5 weeks early? Where is it, what is it, what's season? And yeah, there are times of the year when people are more likely to have symptoms, and yeah, as you say, we'll go into all of that, and that will explain why these outbreaks, or what appear to be outbreaks of symptoms, people having symptoms, why they're likely to occur.
I'm also wondering and I think we learned that a lot of people learned this during the quote pandemic. If let's say a hospital or a doctor's office somewhere, they give instruction to, on let's say October 1st, start doing more tests for the flu. And then that's where you get your cases from. Doesn't mean people are sick, right? It just means that they tested quote positive. So I mean, for example, I guess you could say that on October 1st, you start amplifying the PCR tests from 35 cycles to 50 cycles. And then suddenly you've got all these additional cases and nobody's sick, but it makes for a good headline. It could be that simple too, right?
Yes, I mean, that's one of the possibilities, or one of the factors that could be part of this. Absolutely. Just testing people more frequently, or as you say, ramping up the actual number of cycles. So yeah,
Don't they do that with certain types of quote diseases anyway? So if there's like a quote STD that's circulating, certain offices, doctors' offices, or maybe certain states will do more testing for that specific STD if there's like a CDC alert, as opposed to others, or if there's another disease, for example, measles. We've heard about the measles in the news relatively recently. So anytime there's quote one case of measles, suddenly doctors start doing more tests for measles, and every other disease just kind of gets forgotten about for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, however long the alert lasts. I mean, that's part of the reason, I think, alone why we have the increase and decrease of certain diseases. It's not like something comes out of nowhere and attacks us. It's just because we're putting our attention and focus on something for a period of time.
Yeah, well, it's the media that's putting the attention and the focus. So who knows where the numbers actually come from? Are they real air quote cases? It could be increase in testing. It could be that there's something within a certain area, because sometimes these are local outbreaks in certain areas. So maybe something has changed in the environment in that particular area, and so they test and they start talking about measles or chickenpox. Or I mean, they've been doing so many different propaganda stories over the last couple of months. Just so many different types, and some of them were just pushing for vaccines. Others were scary stories about either really sad circumstances. A child has died, and then they say died from, even though when you look at it, it wasn't exactly. There were complications, because again, with measles, it's pretty much a self-limiting condition, except when there are so-called complications. But those complications are, because I looked into this recently, most of those complications are other conditions arising. They're not measles as such. There's something else going on. So it, indicates a
Like the
deeper
additional
health.
comorbidities.
Yes, yeah. I mean, they're just other conditions that have other names. So they're not complications of measles. They are something else, as you say, comorbidities and some other condition. But they've tied the two together, and they then provide a narrative that says, oh, there's something nasty and it's really dangerous this time. Just like they're
Yes.
trying to do with the flu. It's a very serious disease. Well, for the most part, flu, if you look at maybe like the NHS website, for example, they'll say, I haven't got that in front of me, but they'll say, oh, most people recover within 7 to 10 days or something, or within a 5 to 7 days. These conditions are almost always self-limiting, and they advise, drink plenty of fluids, take rest or whatever. Or they often advise things like taking things like you call it, Americans call it Tylenol, don't they? That's been in the news, of course. So paracetamol, those kinds of painkillers as such, which of course exacerbate it. And sometimes these stories are diversions or distractions from something else going on elsewhere. So they get people to look at something else that is much more personal, like their health, to divert their attention away from something else that may be happening, or to distract them from something else. As I say, there are so many parts and so many moving parts to all of these stories. It's not like, oh, there's this one reason for this thing happening.
Yeah, and every year, when I see these stories, it's almost like when Christmas music starts, you're like, oh well, it's almost time for Christmas in a month or two. I see these stories and I think, well, it's just like an advertisement for the holiday season vaccine schedule. It's basically just an advertisement. It's I don't think it's anything really more than that. It's propaganda, but it's an advertisement. So we have the question, where does the flu go? Is it dormant? Is it taking a nap? Is it hibernating until a certain day? We have the question of, are cases the same as people actually being sick with this serious disease? Does testing have anything to do with it? Obviously it does. Who's giving the order? Is it the national, the National Health Services, whatever country you might be in, the CDC in the US, giving the order that on October 1st, start doing testing or amplify the PCR count, et cetera? And then we have to ask the question, well, what are the symptoms anyway? Because the flu sounds bad, especially if it's a bad flu, but what are the actual symptoms of the flu, especially if everybody recovers for the most part? So what are the symptoms of the flu on average, Don?
Similar to what's called a cold, only usually involves a raised temperature, and often aches and pains. So yeah, the difference between as you've got there, it's I think more the severity of the symptoms, the aches, the fever, and yeah, so cough, cold, sore throat, runny nose, those kinds of things are more like a cold, but as I say, it's just the generally include a fever. Yeah, fatigue as well. Yes. So
Yeah, for
that's
people that can't see, I have the CDC list on the screen.
Mm.
I wanted to ask you about this too, as I guess, sort of a separate question, but we'll stick with the flu. But I'm looking at the symptoms: fever, cough, sore throat, runny nose, muscle, body aches, headaches, fatigue. And I look at that and I think that I've had one or another of these quote symptoms in the last 6 months, because for example, it started to get cold out where I am, slept with the window open a few nights, didn't realize how cold it was, woke up with a sore throat, woke up with a stuffy nose. It wasn't because I caught a virus that was floating outside my window. It was because it was really cold and I probably my nose was a little stuffed. I slept with my mouth open, and then you don't get enough sleep because you have that poor night of sleep, and then maybe you get into a bad cycle of having poor sleep, which I have been in myself. And then you start to get a little bit sore because your body's not healing properly at night. If you don't sleep correctly, which I have a lot of issues with, posture, because I sit in the chair most of the day. I have to get up and move around, stretch. I tend to get a lot of either headaches or neck aches. I mean, just that alone, from my posture to the sleeping with the window open at night when it's cold, gives me at least half the symptoms of the flu. But I know it's not a virus because I know that if I fix my posture and close the window and make it warm in the room, I'm not going to have those symptoms. This is crazy to me, Don.
Mm. I mean, there are all sorts of plenty of other reasons to have some of those symptoms as well. I mean, yeah, all sorts of reasons, as well as the ones you've described. And this is one of the issues that is sometimes difficult for some people to realize, because they say, well, if it's not a virus, what is it, expecting it to be one other thing, and say, well, there's a whole range of things it could be, and we don't always know what they will be, but we can give a whole list of the types of things that it could be, as you say, including as you say, what you were experiencing. Sometimes you can get a headache from being dehydrated, literally. Well, I mean, not like seriously, but if you maybe haven't drunk sufficient liquid, you can, it
Too
can
much
produce
caffeine.
a headache. Too much caffeine, or withdrawing from caffeine. If people decide not to, or they miss their normal coffee in the morning or something, and later on they can get a headache as a it's like a withdrawal. So I mean, so many, we could spend hours talking about the types of things that they could be, and it'll be different for each person because we are all different, really.
Yeah, and
And
my other question was, if you, I mean, you've obviously done this, but if for people that have never done this, look up the CDC's flu symptoms, and then just look up any other quote disease. I mean, you could look up SARS-CoV-2, and you'll find that the symptoms are almost identical, if not completely identical for those two conditions. They're literally identical. So then my question to you, Don, is, it should be an easy question to answer. What distinguishes something like COVID and the flu from one another when they both have the same list of symptoms? How do they distinguish what's what?
It's a name, it's a label, and there is no difference because they aren't actual so-called diseases. Yep, almost, as you say, exactly the same.
There's the sore throat,
Yes.
runny and stuffy nose.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're looking at this for people that are listening audio only, which is the mass majority of the audience. We're looking at the COVID versus flu symptoms. The COVID symptoms are fever, cough, shortness of breath, sore throat, congestion or runny nose, new loss of taste or smell, fatigue, muscle body aches, headache, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. The only differences are new loss of taste or smell and shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, which I thought were really interesting. I did a whole show with the medical literature about how when you are afraid, you can lose your senses. Probably pretty obvious to some people, but when you are afraid, I mean, especially when you're having like a panic attack, what happens? Shortness of breath. When you are frightened by something, you lose your sense of smell or taste. This is well documented for probably, I mean, it's probably 50, 60, 70 years in the literature that I read. And what happened for 4 years, Don?
Absolutely.
Terrifying stories
Yeah.
every day.
Yes. Yes. Definitely. I totally agree. There would definitely be a lot of that. A lot of people experiencing that, as you say, shortness of breath, the breathing, and of course that it was supposedly a respiratory thing. So again, there may be some areas where there were new substances introduced into the environment that may have affected the breathing. So that could
Sure,
be a
yes.
factor in some places. And certainly Wuhan and that part in Italy, both of them were known to have pretty bad air pollution. So the difficulty breathing, that was not a new thing that people were experiencing, but of course it was brought into it. Now, loss of taste or smell is nothing new, was nothing new in 2020. Loss of taste and smell are symptoms that people have experienced forever. That they certainly weren't new. Now they say new, so it's like something people hadn't experienced before, but it's not. It's nothing. None of it was new, because the body is actually extremely intelligent. Well, it's more than intelligent. It's a self-healing organism, and sometimes it will send messages to discourage you maybe from eating because it's got some healing to do, for example, and digestion takes the energy away from other processes. So if the body requires some healing, or says, it's possible that it will send messages of either, a lack of hunger or, loss of sense of taste and smell, because if you can't smell and taste, then you don't necessarily want to eat, and maybe that's because the body wants to undertake some healing processes, and so it wants to discourage food intake, because, as I said, that takes up energy. Digestion takes up energy, so because the body is extremely,
Sounds like your body knows what it's doing.
Yes, does, doesn't it?
Yeah, does sound like
but
that.
But they don't want us to know that, do they? Because that takes away their ability to scare us and make us do what they want, like take vaccines.
You remember this story too? I just posted on the YouTube video here. Link between wildfires and COVID cases. I mean, I live places where there's wildfires, and you breathe that stuff in. You can't really breathe for weeks. Your nose is stuffed, your eyes are itchy and red, you can barely sleep, you do get fatigued. And instead of saying, well, that's what happens when you breathe in wildfire smoke, they said, no, actually that causes COVID. Which in a way, I guess it's ironic and true. It does cause COVID if COVID is just your body's natural response to those types of things and not a virus, but that's obviously not what they're saying. So I guess the virus is carried in the wildfire smoke. I mean, this is like crazy stuff. This is like psychosis level insanity.
Totally. And fine particulate pollution they're talking about, which is not surprising that people then have respiratory problems. That's exactly what I mean, that in certain areas there will be something going on in the environment that then creates some kind of problem in this respiratory system to then manifest certain symptoms. But again, cases are just about testing, and many so-called cases, again inverted commas here, air quotes for people who are just listening, that the cases didn't necessarily require somebody to have symptoms. So
that's true, right? There's a difference between the testing where you have a case and then people that actually have symptoms that would be classified as a case. That's a very confusing thing to people, myself included. I get it, but it's still confusing.
Yes, exactly. And that's how they manage to scare people with this whole asymptomatic carriers, that people could test, have a positive test result, and then not have any symptoms. So they didn't feel ill, but they were a carrier, asymptomatic.
They were a carrier.
Yeah. And so that's how they got everyone scared and everyone keeping away from each other.
So this article here is from the Harvard Gazette, just for the record, if you don't remember that or if you've never seen it. COVID and wildfires, that's the Harvard Gazette. We were looking at the CDC website for the symptoms of the flu and the symptoms of COVID. Tonight is not a COVID show or anything like that necessarily, but we began by talking about how flu season has come 5 weeks early in the UK. I also read that flu season has begun in the United States, conveniently, from what I read, Halloween week, as if the virus, decided to attack people this week and not last week or last month or in the middle of the summer. And so we were looking at all this tonight because since it is the day following Halloween, I suppose it would be then All Saints Day, according to the Catholic Church. Since we're looking at all of this tonight and following up Halloween, I was curious to know what are some of the other things that are not disease related that result in people being seriously injured around Halloween. And we have a list of things that I read from a relatively recent CNN article, why so many Americans end up in the ER. And I just wanted to share this with you because I think that we can relate it to what we're discussing. The main thing that lands people in the ER around Halloween is people that are carving pumpkins and the knife slips and they cut themselves. And although that is probably, more often than not a legitimate accident, there's definitely people that mess around and do stupid things. And those people are the reasons why when I buy anything that requires a moisture absorber in a pack, it says don't eat this. Those are the kinds of people that's why they put those things in the packages that say the statement don't eat this on those little moisture packs, because people will actually eat it not knowing it's not food. That has to be at least part of the number of people that probably cut themselves on Halloween doing stupid stuff. But another reason that people get sick or get hurt is because they fall. We have makeup, costume rashes and reactions because you're putting really nasty stuff on the skin. People, surprisingly, one of the numbers that I read was like a surprising number of people injure themselves with candles. I'm not sure if that means they're lighting the candle or they forget there's a candle burning. They stick their hand in the pumpkin. I'm not sure how enough people burn themselves on candles that it becomes a significant injury. Again, that might be one of the reasons why they tell you not to eat those moisture packets. But the allergy one was what stood out to me, Don, because once again, you have people that are putting, and when we're talking about Halloween makeup, it's not even, I don't think the quality of regular makeup, it's the lowest of the lowest quality. And it's probably very toxic and very poisonous. And you put that stuff on your face and then you have a reaction to it. I genuinely wonder, like people that go to the ER with one of these allergic reactions. I don't know this for sure. I'm just speculating. Like, how many doctors actually say, well, that's probably the Halloween makeup you're having a reaction to? Or does the person get labeled with some other kind of condition or disease? It's not a question that we can answer necessarily. I'm just saying that those are the kinds of things that we do. We put toxic things on our face, and then we have to go to the ER, and then, oh, you have a disease now. It's like, no, it was the makeup from the dollar store that I put on my face that was made in a laboratory in China. That's what made my face break out the way that it did. And just applying that to anything and everything that happens in daily life, it's a very logical, rational thing. I put something here on my face. I had a reaction to it. It's probably what I put on my face. It's probably not a virus that was waiting outside to attack me. To me, that's logical, but I suppose that isn't the way that the media and corporations would like people to think.
Yes, the media and corporations. I would imagine there are some people in the ER who are likely to understand what's going on. Certainly, if the child still has the makeup on. But again, yeah, I found that absolutely amazing. That there were so many accidents, the carving injuries. I suppose I shouldn't be too surprised, but yeah, just the. I mean, I suppose it's bigger in America than it is here in England. So more children are out and about and maybe not being careful on the street or something. I don't know, or is it something that it's just really blown out of proportion and
probably that too.
Yeah, just
Well, I had talked about on a recent show, I think I might have mentioned it last night as well, that in other countries, because Halloween might not be as big in other countries, at least it isn't here in the East, although Japan does like a Western Halloween, and they have some pretty wild Japanese Halloween parties in Shibuya and Tokyo. But there's a lot of things that if you look at what's happening in the US or the UK, I don't know as much about what's happening in the UK, but at least the US, the numbers are nowhere near that for any other country. Like I looked up the numbers for Japan about, obviously you're not going to have pumpkin carvings because we don't really have pumpkins here. But people have, I mean, Tokyo's famous for Halloween parties. So people dress up, people go out and do these things. You don't really have trick-or-treaters here, so you're not going to have the same um, the same types of activities to compare, but you still have Halloween parties, and even with makeup, people just don't really have the same reactions here. So I don't know if that's like a genetic thing or if that's the quality of the makeup. It's there's a lot of things like that where if you look at from a US perspective or a UK perspective, and then you compare it, I've compared it to Japan because that's where I'm living, but you compare it to other countries, and it's just like that, those kinds of things don't happen there. So is it like better quality, products, or is it, I don't know, is it a genetic thing, or is it I mean, I don't know what, there's something weird about that other countries just don't have the same kinds of problems. It might also be because other countries don't consume even close to the same amount of drugs that, well, Westerners, but especially Americans consume. That might have something to do with it. I mean, Tokyo is the biggest city in the world, so you'd expect there to be quite a bit of pollution there, and yet you just don't have the same kinds of things that happen here that you have happen in the U.S. I'm trying to figure out why that is. It has to be something about, at least in America, just the overwhelming toxicity of everything. And you'd think that that's the same thing anywhere in the industrial world, but apparently it's not. Or maybe people's genetics are different. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I wouldn't go with the genetics side of
Well,
things. I
that's
mean,
their argument is always genetic.
yes, yeah. I agree. I know there are a number of colorings and chemicals and like whether they're food colorings or sort of colorings and flavorings and things that are used in America that are banned in other countries. I know that. So certainly when I've been looking at food colorings, those sorts of things, there are certain substances that are banned in, I think, generally in Europe. So maybe there are somewhat more toxic ingredients within American products. Maybe there are more lenient regulations there, even though it's supposed to be, highly regulated. So, but that we know the regulations don't actually mean things are better. It just, because we know who is in charge of those regulations, and they can be persuaded to allow things that maybe wouldn't be allowed otherwise. So that, the system doesn't work the way we're told it works. It's not there to protect us. So you've like the US referring to the US Consumer Product Safety Commission, like the FDA. They really are not there for protecting people, even though that's what we're told. They are
Data, really. It feels
sorry.
like they're basically there to collect data, is what it
Yeah.
appears, and then that data can be used however the media or however a political party wants to use it, is what it feels like, what it seems like.
To a certain extent, and there's some just rubber stamping going on, and things are approved. There's a lot of corruption and influencing going on. There's so much, that who knows how many products are still allowed. I saw something where they were going to, it was this many years ago, they were going to remove, I think it was one of the red dyes, one of the ones that were
Red dye
seen to,
number 3, I believe.
could be, yeah. And they said they were going to remove it by whatever year. And it was something like 4 or 5 years' time. And you go, why can't you
Oh, yeah.
remove straight away. We're going to phase it out over years. Why? Why can't you just say, no, that cannot be used? 6 months, okay, give companies 6 months to change their stock or whatever, but to phase it out over a shorter period of time. But it was years.
Oh, you're totally
So
right. In fact, I mean, I would even say at the most liberal, give them a year. But that's not what's happening. There's some stories about that I remember in 2015 doing radio about Panera Bread or about Burger King. Oh, they're going to remove it by 2024. It's going to take a decade. And the thing is, I did a show on that, and it's been so long, I don't even remember what the ingredient was. It might have been Burger King. I know one was Panera Bread. I don't even remember, and I talked about it on air. So I know the average person has no clue, and I'm pretty sure if I went back and found that show, I could go look at the ingredients at one of these companies, and I'd find that they probably never removed it, or they just changed the name of it. Nobody remembers after a couple of days, let alone a couple of decades.
absolutely, that's exactly my point. So there's and they may do a slight change on the constitution, the chemical constitution of that particular substance.
Yes.
And because I know there were, I think it was BP when they introduced BPA, and there was a lot of research that showed that there was a problem. So they kind of, oh well, suddenly they were changing things and a BPA free, and the replacement was not necessarily better than the BPA. So I mean, they changed it. Oh, we've changed it. Yeah, wonderful. Is it safer? Is it better? Is it
Yes.
cleaner? So I mean, okay, maybe that's not the best example. And again, don't quote me, because this, again, it's a while since I looked at it, and who knows how many times they've changed those substances as well. So we can't keep looking at everything that's going on, because things have changed, and we don't necessarily get all the information to be able to have a look, because there's only a certain amount of the ingredients that they are obliged to tell us. So I think if it's below a certain percentage, they're not obliged to actually put that on the ingredients list. And sometimes that they include something that if it was on the label, people wouldn't buy it, but they include it in an amount that falls below that level, so they don't have to actually declare it on the ingredients list.
Yeah, and I've told you, I've seen some lists in the US. It was probably 2019 the last time I saw something like this, but there was I think it was like an oat milk, and it had some kind of flavor in it, and I wasn't going to drink it, but I was just reading ingredients because I guess I kind of am a nerd for that. So I'm reading these ingredients and looking at these labels, and I saw this list of ingredients, and then I don't know, for some reason I just had this intuition to just read the rest of the package, and I looked down, and I don't know if this is even legal or if there's like a loophole. They had separated the ingredients. So you had the normal ingredient list at the top, and then at the end of that list it said and then they put the remainder of it at the very bottom of the carton. So the top was like, oats, for example, and water and salt and vanilla. Not that bad. And then you get to the bottom and it's like also 3 different food colorings, syrups, powders, magic potion, lotion type of stuff. And it's like, how is that legal to separate the ingredient list? But it's still on the package, so I guess it's okay. They put it on there. It's your responsibility to read it. It's very deceptive, very evil.
Yes, I've not come across that one. That's that's it. There's all sorts of regulations. They work out how to get around them. But no, I have not come across that one.
Someone in the chat said, we'll go to the chat for a moment here. Someone in the chat, Mystical Hydra in the chat, said way less injuries on Halloween than Thanksgiving, mostly due to deep frying turkeys. And they're totally right. I think it's like 10 times the amount or something. It's a crazy number. It's about 3,000, 4,000 people on Halloween cut themselves, allergic reactions to makeup or to costumes, which are sprayed with God knows what in Chinese factories for the most part. But it's somewhere around 10 times or more the number of people on Thanksgiving. But that's not really because of chemicals and whatnot. It's because people are deep frying turkeys and they're exploding. That's the main reason. But that's a whole nother thing, but that is an important thing to bring up in the chat. Thank you, Mystical Hydra, for bringing that up. Deborah said makeup too. Yes, that's right. Joe Ryder, I'm a little bit behind in the chat, but Joe Ryder said yes, chemicals too in the food, Ryan. You're right. Mystical Hydra also mentioned the cultural aspect of why these things might be different, and you're right about that. In Japan, it's definitely cultural. In fact, I can tell you from the Halloween candy that I've seen, the packages are maybe a third the size they are in the US. And what we would consider a kid's size is like an adult size here. So that definitely is part of the reason that even if it isn't the greatest thing in the world, it's a smaller version of it, a much smaller version. And you don't buy, I mean, they have bulk bags, but a bulk bag is like what, I don't know, it's like what kids would get if they stuck their hand in a candy bowl and just grabbed a bunch of candy. That's like a bulk bag over here. So it's definitely a cultural thing as much as it is a chemical thing, an environmental thing, etc. Is it like that in the UK too? Is it just excess? Because I think excess might be one of the main causes of the problem for Americans. It's excess upon excess. Is it the same in the UK?
I was going to say that's a really good point. That it's the quantity, not just the quality. It literally is. If they're stuffing their faces, I think there's a tendency to follow Americans or America, to follow habits. A tendency in the UK to follow the US, and so there is a. Some things are similar. See, where I live, where I live at the moment it's at the end of a close, and there's no passing traffic. I don't have trick or treaters, so I don't see any of that. It's been, well, I was going to say it's been quiet. We've been having fireworks the last few days, so we're moving up because 5th of November is a big thing here. And so there's a lot of fireworks displays. Only it did start raining, so I would have thought that stopped a number of the bonfires and fireworks. To some extent, yes, there are huge bags of rubbish here. You can get those bulk bags. So I'd say definitely the culture of in the UK is far closer to that of the US.
I figured, yeah.
And so because when I posted the on Facebook, sort of a post about this show, somebody said, "Oh, they eat something sweet every day," and it's like, well, missing the point that the amount of 1 or 2 sweets that might have lots of chemicals and colorings and things might be okay, but it's when it's a whole big bag full, and maybe it's maybe even just one day a year to do that. Okay, they probably won't feel well, but when it's a habit, it's a constant habit over time.
It's starting of a season too. Halloween starts the season of this, and then and growing up as an American, it was your Halloween candy, which increasingly, like Christmas music, started to branch out before and after. So then after Halloween, you get the discounted candy. That used to be how it was. Now it's before Halloween, as you can see on the screen. According to this CVS survey, most Americans are restocking 3 times or more before Halloween even begins. So this means that people are buying enormous bulk bags and consuming this candy themselves. It's not all children, and then stocking not once, not twice, not 3 times, but potentially 4 or more times. So then, so you get the you get the day of, which wouldn't necessarily be a big deal. Then you get the post until all that candy's sold out. And then you start with the prep for Thanksgiving. And if you grew up in an American household like me, Thanksgiving was as many bags of sugar as you could possibly put into every possible dish that would accept sugar. You put it in the green beans, you put it in the pies, etc. Put the cranberry sauce, etc. And then you move on to Christmas, and as soon as Christmas starts, it's the big tins of caramel popcorn and fake cheese this, and then you get to Christmas and you have the same kind of dinner. Then it's like, well, New Year's is in a week, so we'll have another celebration for that. And then by the time you get to the middle of January, you gain 15 pounds, which isn't even necessarily the biggest issue, because the damage you've done to your body internally otherwise is potentially, I don't know if I can say this scientifically speaking, but it feels like it probably lasts up to a year until the next season starts. And then it just cycle repeats itself. So it's not just eating some candy one night. It's a cultural thing that unfolds this time of the year. And that, I'm not saying that's the only thing that causes people to be sick. It's not like that's what causes the flu. People used to die very young in the old world, especially around this time of the year, because of the lack of resources, people exposed to the elements, etc. Luckily, we don't have that problem for the most part today. If you have a place to live, most people do. We don't have the issue of living outside in the elements, but we have other problems that we've created that make us very sick and kill us early, even if it's a slow kill. So the point is, it's a cultural thing, and it's a seasonal thing that we're creating these problems. It's not the only reason, but it's a reason. It's a big reason. That's my assessment. I'd like to know what you feel about that, Dawn.
Well, you're probably not going to be too surprised that I pretty much agree with you. It is cultural, it is habits. I mean, stunning that people are stocking up so many times even before the day, and it's there's something deeper as well. It's not just culture that they're doing that. It's why they are in that position, that they think it's okay to do that and not to worry about the effects that or the lack of concern for their own health, or the unawareness of the impact on their own health. And this is where the whole thing is so much deeper. It starts from when they're young, and at the same time it goes back a long way because of the conditioning of how we have been trained, indoctrinated to think, to approach life, to approach our health, to think that, well, most Americans like that probably just think, oh, well, they can eat whatever they want, and if they get ill, they'll just go to the doctor will give them a pill and they'll be fixed. I mean, that's, in a nutshell, but that really isn't how health is. That really isn't what disease is. That isn't the way to understand how to live if you want to be healthy, So I think there are deeper issues behind why people get into these habits, why they look forward to something where they can just splurge on candy, which is, of course, addictive as well.
I guess
Just
there's.
these.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Dawn,
these
go
big
ahead.
feasts. No, I was just going to say, where they have these occasions, they have big feasts and something or other. It's almost like they're trying to fill something in their lives. There's something missing that they're using this to fill, and that's what I mean by a deeper psychological thing.
Yeah, someone in the chat said people often blame weed as a gateway drug, but dopaminergically I'm not sure what that word is. It's sugar. I would say that sugar is an issue, but I don't think it's necessarily the sugar. I think it's the food coloring too. We've known for decades that food coloring is neurotoxic, and that it's very, very bad for children. And that's probably one of the core reasons. I was reading another study about this the other day, that one of the core reasons why kids get, quote, hyperactive, it's not because they're eating lots of sugar per se, it's because of the food colorings. And that's just, we've done shows on that in the past. We don't have to talk about that in detail tonight, but food colorings are one of the main culprits that just, I think, get left out of most of these conversations in exchange for blaming sugar. I guess the one positive thing about this story from NBC, most Americans eat their candy before Halloween, study shows. It says buying bags of candy twice before the calendar flips over to November isn't even that bad, considering 1 in every 4 people surveyed confess to restocking 3 times or more before trick-or-treaters arrive at their door. However, one of the reasons for this is because food allergies, and people are eating the candy and not giving the candy out, and instead they're giving kids little tiny toys, which I suppose that's a positive thing, in exchange for well, we used to give out like apples and home baked goods, and then people got afraid of razor blades, so we started handing out candy, which I've always thought, I don't know if it's an actual conspiracy, but I've always thought, the candy companies love that razor blade and an apple legend. I don't know if you know anything about that, Don. Do you know anything about the razor blade and the apple?
No, I have not heard that one. I'd say that was a piece of propaganda to obviously
Oh, yeah.
help big candy, shall we say?
See, that was your immediate reaction. Is that's what you thought? Because that's what I've always thought too. In the U.S., this has been a legend since like the 70s, maybe before. That apple, because people used to give out apples. It's one of the core staples of Halloween traditions going back to the Celtic lands. Apples or home baked treats like little pastries. And then sometime in the 70s, 80s, maybe even in the 60s, and then it definitely, I think, was revamped or resurrected in the 90s when I was a kid, that apples are dangerous, that home baked treats are dangerous, people are putting razor blades in them. You should look this up. You could write a book on this. This is huge in the US. At least when I was a kid in the 90s, and then I found out it goes back to the 60s, people were told that evil, bad Satanists are putting razor blades in your apples. And that was the first thing when I started researching and learning things as an adult. That's the first thing I thought too. That look on your face, Don. I thought, oh my God, this is like propaganda from the candy companies to get people to buy candy. And I don't know if there's ever been any evidence of that, but those companies definitely benefited from the razor blade and the apple myth. Something for you to look up. That's my treat to you. You're going to like that story. It's definitely the candy companies benefiting.
Yes, thank you. Interestingly, talking about sort of myths and different things, I found another website. I printed this out. It's perumhealth.org. I mean, it's a health-based website, and there are a number of. The title is "Spooky Myths versus Medical Facts: A Halloween Health and Fact Check." So yeah, this is fact checking. So the first myth was eating too much sugar makes kids, and again in inverted commas, hyper. The spooky tale is that parents have long believed that candy-fueled kids bounce off the walls with sugar-induced energy. The fact is now scientific studies show, and yeah, studies show. I mean that's a great start, isn't it? Without
no link to the studies.
No link. No, exactly. Scientific studies show sugar itself doesn't directly cause hyperactivity. What you're probably noticing is the excitement of costumes, party, and trick-or-treating. Still, consuming too much sugar can cause stomach aches, dental issues, and long-term health concerns. So moderation and a good toothbrush remains the best policy. So yeah, exactly. Now, strictly speaking, that may be correct, but again, so this is where we get the thing where sugar means lots of. That's it. Yes, sugar means lots of things to lots of different people. Sugar means the pure sugar. Sugar means the actually, sorry, was this something you sent me a link to, or was that something else?
One of the ones.
Oh, I'm sorry. Because I looked at a few other things as well, and then I realized you've got that. So it leads to people saying, "Oh, well, all fruit contains sugar, therefore fruit's bad for you." There's the word sugar. Now, sugar in itself isn't necessarily bad. It's I think what we're talking about is the refined sugar that has had any goodness that was ever in it completely taken out, completely removed. And also within fruit, it's not just fruit contains sugar. There are a whole load of other components that work synergistically, and they work together, and they allow the slow release of the sugar so that the body absorbs it in the right way. It's within a food. It is not a complete a separate substance that is then added to foods, that's been highly processed. Yes.
So that's why you call an apple a whole food. There's on a list of ingredients.
Yes.
On the apple. No, that was a seamless transition into this story. This is great because, I mean, so you have, yeah, I'm sure kids are really hyperactive and excited. It's Halloween. Great. But obviously it should be obvious. That's not the only reason that your kids are really, really bouncing off the walls. It's probably, yeah, the sugar a little bit, but it's also probably the food colorings. There's probably a lot more to all of these myths and all of these facts. There needs to be context added to all of this stuff that we read. That's really deceptive, though. I mean, if I can just imagine a news story about that, there's all these stories about sugar affecting your kids, but tune in at 6 o'clock for the evening news to learn about why it's not really sugar. And you tune into the news and they tell you it's not really sugar; it's just your kids excited for Halloween. To me, I feel like there's just some like very evil person in the PR department just conjuring these ideas out of the ether. It sounds so wicked to me that anybody would sit there and try to manipulate parents into thinking that there's no problem at all with the food colorings. There's no problem at all with the candy or the excess or the sugar. It's just your kids excited. I just feel like someone's like rubbing their hands together like Smithers in The Simpsons. Excellent. It just strikes me as really, really evil. Not even like a guy in a suit, some big corporation doesn't really have any empathy. Just like someone who's pure evil is the impression that I get. It's really, really deceptive and gross. That's just me rambling on about how I feel about it. I think it's so disgusting. There's other myths here too we can look at.
Yeah, I was going to say I agree. It's also to stop people from looking at things properly, to ask questions, to start trusting themselves and taking responsibility. That's part of the medical system, that they are taking our agency away from us, or they're attempting to stop us from thinking for ourselves, from taking responsibility. So it's like, it's very patronizing that, oh no, it's not the
Yes.
sugar, it's just your child is excited. It's just it yeah, I mean, yes, evil, and again, yeah, as I say, smacks of being patronizing, which is of course how they want us to remain, feeling like children, looking up to them as our authority, that we have to listen to what they say. And of course some people say, oh well, that's okay, then I don't have to worry about sugar. Well, yeah, which is a shame.
You'll like the
Yes.
second myth. You want to talk
Okay.
about the second myth? I know that's probably the one that you're the most an expert on.
Talking of that, I have actually noticed in the chat somebody has asked if I'm a nurse or a doctor. I have no training in the medical system. I have something like 17 or 18 years of research behind me.
Yeah, we did.
Looking into this. That was all. It's just so to answer that question, that I don't have air quotes a medical qualification. I just have been researching like Ryan
So
over the years.
a couple of things. I want you to explain, yes, your book. Usually I do when I have a guest on, I have like an intro for the guest, but since you've been on the show so many times, I consider Dawn more of a co-host. And most listeners probably know who she is anyway, but yes, it's important to tell people who you are and what your book is, since we're at the halfway point of the show, and explain to them, when you say research, what does that mean? Does that mean using ChatGPT? Does that mean using internet forums? Or are you an actual researcher over 2 decades and you've put together, published works? Tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll go back to this list of Halloween myths.
Well, I'll keep it brief. The research involves reading mainly older works of people who actually practiced, shall we say, healing, and how they managed to help their patients without using the standard medical system, and looking at different papers, looking at yes, reading study papers, trying to understand how they explain why we get ill, what these diseases are. So, and that ended up culminating in a book of nearly 800 pages that I co-authored with David Parker. The book is called What Really Makes You Ill. That's it. Why everything you thought you knew about disease is wrong. And it's really to say, how we've been taught about, again, air quotes, disease. It's not how our body works. Our body is, as we've said a couple of times, very intelligent, self-regulating, self-healing organism. It can look after itself when we help it do that. Now, when the body expresses symptoms, that's not because we've caught something. It's because our body's expressing mainly cleansing symptoms. They're mainly cleansing processes. They are natural processes of the body healing itself.
That's pretty hard for some people to understand or grasp when you've been conditioned to think anything and everything but that. That's very difficult for people to understand.
Yes, it has been, and a number of conversations over the last 6 years nearly. The book was published in December 2019, so we're coming up to 6 years, and it's just unbelievable how. Yeah, I mean, it was divine timing. The book came out just before 2020 hit, which is,
After 10 years of research, what timing?
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, as I say, divine timing. So, I again, not spooky, but there's definitely something, some bigger processes going on to help us learn who we are and how to understand who we are and what we can actually do, to help ourselves. And I mean, some of those quotes, are people who were medical doctors and then discovered that, what's wrong within the system and started speaking out. So learning some of the things they were saying and talking to people. So multiple sources. So not just one source for one particular, it was not just one source for something, even though sometimes we just quote one source. That was, if you like, the best source that was quoted because
yes,
there were loads. Otherwise, the book would have been 8,000 pages rather than 800. So there's.
You guys you went to the direct sources for everything, right? I mean, for your
as much as we could. As much as we could, yes. Because, and again, quoting scientists and medical doctors as much as possible to show that we weren't just making it up, and a lot of it was gathering information like jigsaw pieces and putting it together. Now, the book is not just about, germs and that they don't cause us to be ill. There's a whole load more. So you talk about what are called infectious diseases. We also talk about what are called chronic conditions and what the medical system knows about those, or rather what the medical system doesn't know. And then we look at the kinds of issues that can contribute to the symptoms that we have that we call disease or illness. What the causes are, and it's not just, like I said before, it's not just one cause. There's almost always a combination of different causes. And we also look at the background to the system, so things like the WHO and the UN and the agendas that are there. So not to scare people, but to provide people with a full background of so they can understand why the system is the way it is, because in many cases, these are big corporations running things, and also to help them realize that it's stacked against them, and to then help them so it's really to say, these are the problems and there are things that you can do about it. Because once so again, looking like food coloring, so one of the, within the section that within the chapter on it's quite a large chapter about where the sources of poison, if you like, are. There's a section on food and on food colorings. And it's not to scare people, it's to say, well, when you know that these substances are unhealthy, you can read the labels and say, oh, that's in that product, I won't buy it. So you can make an informed choice. That's the purpose of
Empowerment.
providing that information. So it's empowerment. So really, yeah.
I mean, what
So
should
that's
scare
the
people? You shouldn't scare people. I shouldn't scare people. What should scare people is that there are companies that do this, knowing what these ingredients do to the body and maybe even to the mind, and yet they continue to put them in there anyway. And it should also scare people when finally they decide to remove those ingredients because of a public backlash. Or if we go back to the chat room, someone had asked about RFK Jr., which maybe we could discuss that as well. And when someone like that gets into power and says, well, let's remove this and replace it with this, etc., whether you consider it good or bad, companies start making these changes and they just change the name of something, or they put something equally as bad into the product. That should scare you. Or especially when a company says, we're going to change the ingredients. Don't worry, it'll taste exactly the same. It's like, well, then why didn't you just have different ingredients to begin with if you can make it taste exactly the same without that very toxic thing that's been known since 1947 to cause this, this, and this? That should scare people, not Don Lester or Ryan Gable. These companies and these liars should scare you, not people like us. That's my two pieces, my 2 cents.
Oh, yes, and I agree. So yes. So would you like me to address that question you've got there, or should we go back to the myth number 2, the cold weather causes colds?
Both. Let's do this question fast since I just brought it up in the chat
Okay.
room about RFK.
I'm going to be careful here. I don't know which aspect. If you're talking about his view on vaccines, there are various different aspects to this. One of the things he said is that, they're looking for safer vaccines, and I would say there's no such thing, because because the reason they are used is based on an unproven hypothesis. I mean, the germ theory is it's not even a theory; it's a hypothesis, and it's totally unproven. So there is absolutely no reason to even use vaccines, because they don't work the way they could never work the way they're supposed to, because they can't do what they're supposed to do, which is to stop the body reacting to invaders. The thing is that these what are called germs don't invade the body and attack it. So it's completely
It's a
waste of
flawed theory of the body.
Oh, it's definitely the wrong way of looking at the body. But there is nothing effective. There could never be an effective vaccine. So it doesn't matter how safe they make them. They would never be effective in preventing disease, which is what they claim to do, and they can't, because that's not what disease is, which is why the subtitle in the book is Why Everything You Thought You Knew About Disease is Wrong, because there are no diseases that we, again, air quotes, get, that we don't catch things. As I say, these are the body producing symptoms to cleanse itself, to clear something, and not necessarily always physical, because we are energetic beings, are sort of emotional beings, so we can create situations and conditions within our body as the result of being scared. And we go back to the beginning when you were talking about some of those symptoms of shortness of breath that can be from people being absolutely terrified. And that's what I mean. So there's nothing actually happening. Somebody's been told something, they see something and they're terrified, and that can cause a condition within the body. The body can react to that.
Yeah.
So
it's reacting, not being attacked.
Yes, exactly. And the body reacts exactly the same way to a perceived threat as to a real threat. So, you know, the body will react in a certain way if you're in the jungle and you see a tiger. At the same time, you can also be made to be just as fearful or just as scared by reading lots of newspaper reports or hearing persistent media reports about some nasty thing that's out there that is going to get you, even though there isn't a nasty thing out there that is an invisible enemy out there that's going to get you. People can respond in the same way, as I say, to a perceived threat.
Yeah, the way that
So
disease is treated is very similar to terrorism. How do you define it? How can you fight an idea? It's not like people might even think terrorists are groups of people. Well, not necessarily. Terrorism is like a tactic. It's like trying to fight terrorism. It's etheric, it's ghost-like. Same thing with disease, or well, the triggers for disease as they refer to them as. Well, there's also 2 or 3 other things that I'll pull out of that question from the listener to you, Don. There's
yes.
the idea of beef tallow. As long as we fry McDonald's fries in beef tallow, they're okay. There's the argument over how RFK Jr. has cut funding for vaccine programs, which people have been put like, oh, this is such a great thing. And then you read it, and it says, well, they didn't actually really cut funding. They basically stopped certain programs and then took that money and injected it into other mRNA programs. So they're actually increasing mRNA research, not decreasing it. They've cut out the lower level people. And then there's also he was also, I don't know if you know this, he was also promoting these like pre-made meals that are essentially just super ultra highly processed garbage, which is weird. I mean, I've never really followed RFK Jr. that much. I know about him. I like some of the stuff that he said and done, but that seems contrary to everything the guy's ever said and done. So I don't know if it's like a compromise thing or a blackmail thing or what it is, but those are some of the other things that he's been doing and associated with that if you want to comment on for listeners.
Yes, I haven't heard of that. I haven't heard of the, you know, McDonald's in beef tallow. Like you, I haven't followed him, and I don't necessarily follow those sorts of stories. Partly because a lot of it is to be to get people kind of you know, it's the divide and conquer, to get people fighting with each other over different people. You know, I'm with the, you know, the red guy, I'm with the blue guy, you know,
Oh,
whatever it
yeah.
is, you know, and putting forward certain characters as if they're the hero who is going to save us, so we don't have to do anything about it because there's the white knight on his charger coming to save us all. I know more about the kinds of things that's been going on with the recommendations for different vaccines, and I know that there was I did see that there was more money going into what are called mRNA vaccines, and that's a whole other topic as well, because from my research, I don't think they're what we are made out to be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying vaccines aren't dangerous. Absolutely not. I totally, you know, as I've just said, you know, they're unnecessary. They certainly contain harmful ingredients. Absolutely. And they, you know, they do cause a lot of problems. I'm just not sure they function in the way that we are being made to think they function. So just because they're putting money into that research, it doesn't mean that that's how they work. The thing is that they're certainly looking at ways to create all kinds of products, different pharmaceuticals. Yeah, they want to put money into different research. Where it goes, you know, even though we're told it goes into that kind of research, where it actually goes, I mean, who knows? But we do know that the medical research industry is absolutely controlled. So many people who want to have certain studies or want to conduct certain studies, they can only get funding to conduct that study if it is going to somewhat follow the mainstream narrative or it's going to be within the confines of the mainstream narrative. They aren't going to be funded if they want to find something that is actually going to help people. And also many
science.
Sorry,
Oh, I said it sounds contrary to the scientific process.
Absolutely, of course. And there are people who, and I've heard stories of people who said they had conducted a particular study, but because they didn't get the answer that was required, it wasn't published. So,
Oh, yeah.
the whole,
Yeah.
peer review, the whole process. Oh, peer review is the gold standard. Well, it doesn't work that way. It is controlled. It is manipulated. So again, what are they funding? We know, there's a lot of money that goes in. Where it goes to afterwards, we don't exactly know. So, and again, whoever's in a position of, shall we say, apparent authority, they're there because they are doing what they are asked to do. Nobody gets into those positions. Otherwise we'd be able to have, important positions because we're trying to help people understand what's going on.
Yeah, a lot of this is also cultural too. And we have more stuff to talk about with Halloween. I'll make one final comment about the cultural aspects of the political side of this. I mean, when the president of the United States is serving McDonald's to people, and I don't mean in the little promo thing they did where he worked at McDonald's. I mean, when you're serving athletes McDonald's at the White House, or famously you're putting, McDonald's on Air Force One, like you can, even if RFK Jr. were purely benevolent, you can't have the highest authority in the country pushing and promoting this corporate product and still have him in any way, shape, or form, or his administration represent a transformation of health. It's just total nonsense. And I think it's almost ironic in a way that now, sure, it's probably because of stress and all of that as well, but it has to be because of a lifetime of poor diet and lifestyle choices that the president is extremely sick. They're doing secret MRIs. He's got vascular problems. He's got swelling in his ankles and his the rest of his body. He's slurring his speech. He might have even had a stroke. They're pumping him full of drugs like they were Biden. They're having to give him cue cards because he doesn't know what to say, just like Biden. I mean, literally, that's mainstream, even conservative news. Like there's something wrong with him. I'm not saying it's because he ate McDonald's. I'm saying that probably doesn't help, but there's something seriously wrong with him. And this kind of goes along with watching other countries. There's a whole list of them that have these like health officials that are quite literally 400 pounds. And it's like, what in the hell is this? You know what I'm saying, Don?
Yes, I've seen those. And it's like, I mean, I think I've even used one of those, like, would you trust this person with your health? Is this somebody you want to, as a beacon of health? No. I mean, in some ways you think, surely people will realize just how ridiculous that is, to have people who look so unhealthy telling me how to look after my health. I mean, it's outrageous. And yet some people, a lot of people don't see it. But yes, I have seen those. And I think it's more than just one country. It's a number of countries. Yeah, several. It's just absolutely crazy. Yeah. I mean, it would be funny. I mean, it is funny, but it would be hilarious if it wasn't so awful that you have these people and that are supposed to be telling me about how to look after my health. Wow.
Oh yeah. I think the San Francisco Health Department also hired what they call a fat positivity expert to teach people why fat is healthy and positive. Well, you know what that is. Let's go back to the Halloween. But one last comment. You know what that is I think there were several of them, but at least one Roman emperor did the exact same thing. When they got into power, they hired or they brought into their court administration, they brought in prostitutes, they brought in people that were drunks, they brought in people that were not, criminals, not very good people. And the reason they did that was to essentially psychologically traumatize the Senate and to psychologically traumatize the people. Like, this person is so crazy, they will bring in prostitutes to be their second or third hand. I mean, one of the Caesars famously, Julius Caesar famously made a horse his second in command, just to mess with people. And that's what I think a lot of this is, just as a historical note, Don. I think that's what a lot of this is. When you tell people, look, we're going to hire a 400-pound person who has diabetes to teach you about your health. Like, that messes with people, even on a subconscious level. And I think it really it shocks people and freezes people. And that fight or flight method, I think it kind of freezes people in a way, or what they call it, fight or flight. Is it fight or flight? Yeah, fight or flight.
Yes,
But yeah, kind of, it puts people into that situation or that scenario, or people freeze up in fear, like they don't know what to do. Like, this is wrong, but this is what everybody agrees is health. So I'm just thinking that from a historical point of view, there were emperors that used to do that in Rome for that precise reason, to quite frankly just fuck with people so they wouldn't ask questions and they wouldn't rebel, because Julius is so crazy, he's consulting a horse to know what to do next. So no one's going to mess with this guy. I think that's what it is.
Yes, and I think there's an opportunity here to see the antidote, which is laughter. Because when you laugh at it, it has no power over you, because you can't take somebody like that seriously. So I think that has been my approach to Donald Trump, that I've had a problem taking him seriously. But at the same time, I take very little notice of that kind of thing. The political shenanigans, shall we say. I'm more interested in looking at real life and real people and what we can really do.
Well, exactly. So let's go back to the Halloween stuff. Someone had asked the question, so I think we thoroughly addressed it.
Yeah. So did you want to go back to the spooky myths?
Yes, because that second
definitely.
myth, second myth is all you.
Well, you'll catch a cold if you go outside on a chilly October night without a jacket. So that's the spooky tale. The fact, this is the fun part. The fact starts with colds are caused by viruses, not temperature. Well, I'm afraid that is not a fact, and that is not even a theory. It's an unproven hypothesis, because what are called viruses have never been proven to exist the way they are described. They have never been observed in the way they are described. In what we are told is absolutely just not true. And so and I know we've covered this a number of times, but again, go back to the origin of the word virus is from the Latin, meaning a poison or a noxious substance. Now, in that context, you can say that people can be made ill by a noxious substance or a poison. So in that context, it's correct. However, we are told that viruses are genetic material in a protein coat is the basic kind of description, and that entity has never been observed in nature, has never been seen. So yes, the colds are caused by viruses. I'm afraid I'm fact checking, and that is an incorrect fact.
You should rewrite this article.
Well, it then goes on and says, what is true? People tend to spend more time indoors in close contact during colder months. Well, I would agree with that. People are spending more time indoors, so they're not outside in the fresh air, sunshine, connecting with nature, grounding, that kind of thing. So I agree with that. Only the second part of that sentence says, which makes it easier for germs to spread. Well, that's the nonsense part. Again, I'm fact checking. That is not a fact. That is incorrect. So continue. So bundle up for comfort. Well, I'd say yes, that's reasonable. You know, if it's cold outside and you're somebody who feels the cold. Now, there are some people who actually like the cold, who are happy being out in the cold, and that's great. If you're somebody who, like me, is happier in warmer weather, you know, not as keen as, you know, yeah, dress up, you know, put a scarf on, jacket, whatever it is, you know, dress warmly. However, the rest of the sentence, but remember, and it says, it's hand washing, masking, and the flu vaccine, not your winter coat, that keeps the sniffles away. Well, hand washing, nonsense, because that's not about germs. Masking, absolutely not, because that will actually make things worse and more likely to give you respiratory problems, because the breath is one of the body's natural processes of expelling its waste material. So if you're putting on a mask, you're not allowing your body to eliminate that waste material. And the flu vaccine, that is not going to help you, because that will also contribute to your body's burden of toxins, because forgetting the whatever is in the COVID vaccine. I mean, if you look at the package inserts for vaccines, they contain a lot of toxic ingredients, and so they won't keep the sniffles away, because in fact the sniffles are your body trying to detox. And so taking any, you know, either hand washing, so that will be with the you know, hand sanitizer stuff, which is obviously toxic because it's supposed to kill germs. Masking, which is preventing your body from expelling. And, you know, the flu vaccine, they will encourage your body to have the sniffles, because the sniffles are your body expelling the toxins, and those are ways of increasing the toxic load.
So I two things I wanted to mention real fast.
Yes.
Number one, I got the comment about the horse wrong. It wasn't Julius, it was Caligula. Thank you for correcting me in the chat. Just wanted to clarify that I was wrong about that. It was Caligula, but yeah, Caligula did bring in a horse. The second thing is, I'm wondering, Don, if you've come across any psychological study or anything like this that specifically related to COVID, and how, I'll give you an example. I remember when I was working at this grocery store during COVID, I had that job at the co-op grocery store in New York. And this couple came into the store and they got very angry because I didn't have a mask on. And I remember going to get the box. Everybody probably had an experience like this, but I got the box for masks, and I brought it to them, and I showed them on the back where I had highlighted it for the rest of the staff, who apparently were illiterate. And it said, "This mask does not protect against SARS-CoV-2." It said that literally on the box. And I showed it to them, and the guy, it was an older guy. He kind of, like, you know, took in a deep breath and just said, "Fuck you." Like, has there any type of study on that kind of behavior that's come out since the pandemic? Have you read anything about that? Anybody do a study on that?
I haven't, but it wouldn't surprise me that because it's challenging people's belief system, and again, cognitive dissonance, that you know, they've got these ideas, and by you challenging it, it's kind of challenging their persona, that you know, that their ego is threatened, if you like. So I don't know about actual studies, but I know that this is something that a number of people have been talking about. You know, that's why it still does seem to be difficult to have certain conversations, or to have conversations about this with certain people, because they're still very much blinkered and don't want to know. And there will be different reasons for each person as to why. Because if somebody had said, you know, 6 years ago, well, no, maybe not 6, So before, so yeah, no, 5 years ago. So like October 2020, that we'd still be here 5 years later, and where things would be. I wouldn't have believed it, because it should have been so obvious. It's like, oh, there's this big thing, and there are a lot of us saying, this is wrong. It's nonsense, and not well. A large number of people have accepted that and listened and heard and learned and been open to it, but still a lot of people haven't, and a lot of people are still seem to be resistant to it. But not in terms of an actual. I haven't come across or I haven't looked for an actual study where people who've been exhibiting this very aggressive behavior towards people who are trying to help them. I don't know if any. I mean, but that would be really interesting if somebody has
Yeah.
conducted that. I mean, I I can. I suppose there are a couple of people I know who I could ask
Yeah,
and
I was just
see.
curious. I thought if
Yeah.
anybody knew, maybe you would. But anyway, we can move on to the remainder of the
Mm,
show because we have
mm.
limited time here.
Yeah, sure.
Before we do that, just for the record, I like getting things very correct here. Mystical Hydra in the chat again said, "You were half right, Ryan. Caligula's name is Gallus Caesar Augustus." That's probably why Gallus or Gallius or Julius. I probably got that wrong, but
I
thank you for
I
correcting me.
think that's Gaius. I
Gaius,
think
is it
that's
Gaius?
Gaius. I think so. It could be, but I could be wrong as well. So I'm just, but yeah. So okay, that's
Oh, is it Guy? Yeah, maybe it's Gaius. It looked like an L to me. I have to
yeah.
zoom on my screen. Yeah, Gaius.
Gaius
Okay.
Caesar Augustus. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
And I found the name of the other emperor, and I found the quote from the book too. I'll pull this up on the screen so you can see. One of those health ministers is Maggie de Block. I don't know if anybody remembers that name, Maggie de Block. This is the
Oh, the Belgian. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Belgian
Her.
one.
Yes. Yes.
Look, there you go. There's your health
Yes.
minister.
Yes.
So
She's the one I remember, or one of the ones I absolutely remember. And you just, yeah, sure.
yes, and so just going back to what I had said, let me find the.
Except some people will accuse us of fat shaming, and that's not what we're doing.
I think that word is so funny when people accuse people of that.
I know.
So I don't
So
speak Latin, but I'm assuming you pronounce the emperor's name Carinus. Carinus was an emperor for 2 years, and I have a quote here from Gibbon's book in relation to this health minister. Let me pull this up on the screen. So I think that this is why they do stuff like this. So look at this woman. For those of you who can't see her, it's Maggie de Block. There's more than one. There's several of these health ministers, and I believe this is Carinus. I think this is the correct one. Roman emperor, though, and it says this in Gibbon's book, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire. From the dregs of that populace, he selected his favorites and even his ministers. The palace and even the imperial table were filled with singers, dancers, prostitutes, and all the various retinue of vice and folly. One of his doorkeepers he entrusted with the government of the city. In the room of the Praetorian prefect, whom he put to death, Carinus substituted one of the ministers of his looser pleasures. Another who possessed the same or even a more infamous title to favor was invested with the consulship. So this was, again, something that Roman emperors used to do, installing people like this, whether out of psychosis or to mess with people, to confuse people, to show people they have very little power. So this, I've never heard anybody explain this before, but just having read The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire, I think that's probably what it is, just to share that reference with the audience. We can go back to, if we have any additional articles here. I did have that story about Bill Gates apparently changing his view on climate change. That's what people have been saying. It's more so that he wants to focus on what we're discussing tonight, Don. Bill Gates wants to focus on disease. The biggest problems are poverty and disease, just as they always have been. So what does that
well,
mean?
yeah, that well, focusing on disease, as one of the things would be to pharmaceuticals and vaccines would be his response to disease. His suggested solutions, and that is absolutely not, or neither of them are solutions to health problems. Poverty, again, they've been air quotes fighting poverty for a very long time, and they are not doing very well because they don't understand the causes, and in fact in many cases they are part of the cause, because it is about how the system is set up, distribution, all sorts of things. When I say distribution, I'm not talking about like distribution of wealth. It should be a big pot and everyone takes the same amount. I don't mean that at all. It's the control mechanisms that lead to big corporations and the control of everything. So they have no idea of the real causes, and they don't actually want any real idea of the real causes.
Yes.
And anyone who has had a look at the 2030 agenda, when you have a look at their, I think the Sustainable Development Goal number 1 is to eliminate poverty, and they've been doing that's been trying, but it's the words they create these documents. If you read them, it all sounds wonderful, except that they aren't actually trying to help us. That this is not about benefiting us. This is about consolidation of control.
Oh, without doubt. I'm showing on the screen too for people that are not watching. I'm showing right now. Here's an ABC News article from last year, how California had failed to track billions of dollars for their homelessness programs. I think this ties to what Don is saying. And here is at least some of the money they spent, $37 billion. And homelessness in California has only exploded. And some of that is because of immigrants, but a lot of that is because of it would appear, who said that? Was it, I think it was Jordan Maxwell might have said it. A lot of people have made similar statements to the one I'm thinking of, though. But the idea is, do you think that they would be continuing to spend this money if they weren't getting what they were paying for? I mean, a lot of the money disappears. It ends up in people's pockets. People skim the money off the top and the bottom. But a lot of it is I think they're creating the conditions. It gives you something to campaign on. It gives you something to control society with. That's why you get $37 billion and you still have the same problem, except it's worse. And this is the same state that spent like $17 billion building a high-speed rail system that they haven't even really began. And yet countries like Japan can build one for a fraction of the cost back in the 60s. So it's waste, it's sabotage, it's fraud, it's a scam. These are really bad people. These are criminals. All of that and more. That's my take.
I would agree, yes. And again, how do we know what they have spent? Where did it actually go?
Oh, they don't know. The state audit can't find it. They have no idea where it went. Billions.
Well, that's it. So it's to even say they spent that much on the homeless. Well, clearly they didn't, because nobody actually knows what they did. Now, again, I have no knowledge of this article or anything like that, so I'm not making statements. I'm just saying the system isn't set up to help us or to actually resolve these problems, because if they did, one of the things that I say quite regularly is, in order to solve a problem, you have to address the root cause. You can't, so that it's like with health, you don't address the symptoms, you address the root cause. So they're not addressing the root cause of homelessness. So they're never going to solve the problem.
Yep,
it's only going to get worse. And they don't want to address the root cause, because that would actually solve the problem. And they don't, like you said, they want the problem to continue, so they can campaign on it in a way, and also because it keeps people in a position of being dependent on others, on this, you know, and not autonomous, not self governing, not you know, not responsible for themselves. And that's where we do shift this, is by showing people how taking responsibility for themselves in all areas of their lives means that we don't have to rely on this system that is not there to help us anyway.
So when you look at these stories, I wanted to share something with you. I've never experienced this because I guess maybe I'm just too young, but as there's been a resurgence of like pro-American sentiment, understandably, I like it. It's great. I'm an American. But that pro-American sentiment has been very quickly co-opted and or hijacked so that when I have explained on my show, it's maybe like 5% have this reaction. But when I explain on my show, well, look, California spent all this money and they can't build anything and they can't solve the problem. I don't understand why countries like Japan can spend a fraction of the money, have a fraction of the resource, still the fourth largest economy in the world, has tons of problems over here too, but can just like keep the roads clean and like can make public transport run on time and people don't get routinely stabbed or lit on fire. And when I've pointed that out, there's a tremendous number, especially Trump supporters, that have the most nasty things to say to me. You hate America. You hate Trump. You hate, you know, the Constitution. It's like, what are you talking about? The reason I'm bringing that up is because there's a psychosis there too. It's a cultural thing that isn't just the liberals. It's everybody that has been indoctrinated by this system of sabotage is what I think we could call it. Because the conservatives that are in power are doing the exact same thing the liberals did. These problems are not being solved. The problems of health are getting worse. The consumption of drugs are getting worse. I mean, Trump has made that exponentially worse than the Democrats did. He just, I think, stripped all the regulations away. I don't even know how they did that with executive orders, and then just said, we're going to make more drugs in America, and we're going to remove the middleman so that people, this is what the order, I don't know if you read this, the executive order actually said, we're going to remove the middleman and the insurance companies so you can buy drugs directly from the pharmaceutical companies. Like, they've made the problem exponentially worse. And if you try to critique that or point that out, there's always half the country that thinks that you hate whatever that means. You hate America. It's like, no. We have really bad problems, and it's largely because of the culture of corruption and sabotage that we have, and the lack of personal responsibility on top of that. At least that's my assessment, and that's how I think we could start to wind down and conclude the show tonight, Don. If you have anything else you'd like to add about that, or anything else, whatever the case might be, Halloween related, whatever, the floor is yours for a few minutes, and we're out of time.
Yeah, it's I agree with you. It's also the conditioning that we have to take one side or the other politically. You know, if you're either a supporter of this one, and if you don't support this one, then you must support that one. You know, well, if you think that, then you must think that. You know, that there's so much labeling and again division, instead of having conversations, instead of saying why. Well, instead of asking you what makes you say that, right? You know, to have a conversation and explain. I actually, strangely, and I'll keep this very, very brief, I actually met an infectious diseases PhD the other evening, and we had a reasonable conversation, even though he still believed in infection and contagion and things like that. There was still an exchange. It was a brief exchange, but it was polite. And I said, you know, thank you for being polite, because I mean, you know, he's a PhD and I haven't, but it was, and it was okay. No, he was okay. And I think if we can get to more of that, then less of this division, less of this name calling, and everyone, you know, well, you've got to, you know, like you say, because you think this, therefore you are XYZ, you know, you've got this label. It's divisive, and that of course serves their interest, because it keeps people fighting each other instead of realizing what the real problems are, and then saying, oh, hang on a minute, let's get rid of that. What can we actually do together? I've got this idea, I've got this idea. Oh, how can we work together with different ideas? So
Absolutely. And Joe in the chat is right. Joe Ryder said it's because we love America. That's why we're saying these things. And whether it's because of nationalism or it's because, your personal identity, I mean, that is really the core of it. It's because we care about fixing problems, not just paying lip service to them. And that starts with understanding what we have more in common than we have different. And that also includes abandoning this cultural reductionist science where everybody has their own little special field of expertise and it doesn't relate to anything else, when in reality every component relates to every other component. You can't have any machine that works if you don't have all the pieces. And so that's what we have to do to bring our expertise together. Don, thank you so much for coming on the show. I know it's late where you are. I appreciate it. I will
thank
talk
you for
to you
inviting me.
on another show, of course. And the book, as we've talked about already tonight, it's What Really Makes You Ill. You can get a copy of it on the website, whatreallymakesyouill.com, correct?
Not from the website, Amazon. Yeah, there's an audio version, but not the actual physical book. That's not available from the website.
You can get the audio version on the website, though.
Yes.
Okay, a lot of people like the audio version. So of my books, I haven't gotten an audio version out, but people have asked me for one. So I know a lot of listeners like audio versions. So if you'd like to get the audio version, whatreallymakesyouill.com. Otherwise, the Amazon search will bring you the book. It's a big book. It's turquoise. What Really Makes You Ill. If you want a link to it, you can email me at rdgable@yahoo.com. Alrighty, that is our Halloween series conclusion. Don, again, thank you so much, and I will talk to you on another show. You have a good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. And there goes Don Lester. I'm Ryan Gable. Thank you so much for joining us in the chat room tonight. tstradio.info is the website. You can access the full show archive from the website, the social media links, my books, etc. That is tstradio.info. If you're watching the video tonight and you're listening, maybe if you're listening just in the archive, either way, you can find the links to everything below the show description. So however you're listening, just scroll down and you'll see all the different links. You can buy me a coffee, you can grab a book, you can subscribe, or just listen to the free archive that supports the show as well. All right, have a great weekend. Stay safe, stay informed as always, and I will talk to you on the next broadcast. Have a great weekend. Have a great night. Happy Halloween.